games are meant to be called, and friends can never be bought. Celebrate because we are the champions, setting it off again. Oh, we on fire.
Hey guys, so I want to discuss what makes a good forehand versus an elite best of the best forehand. So I'm going to be comparing this top junior player's forehand to Alcaraz, Sinner, and other top players and see what the difference is, because it's very subtle. This player already has a very good forehand, but there's a few key things that are causing him to lose a little bit of power and control. His kinetic sequencing is not optimal. This player is Trevor Svajda, and he's playing against Lerner Tien. This was a few years ago. Lerner Tien is now beating players like Daniil Medvedev. So obviously, these guys are at a very high level. So let's get into the good things he's doing. He's got a very nice setup, a very tall posture here. Very good. I like what he's doing with his arms. He's got almost a 90-degree angle here. The racket tip is vertically oriented, which I've discussed in other videos. That's important. He almost has like a Federer kind of looking setup, at least in the initial take back. So it's very good. There's very good spacing. Okay. Nothing looks jammed or cramped. His arms are decently far away from his body, but nothing's too close. So he does a very good job in the initial take back. He's also got a good athletic base, as I said, good posture, and he gets pretty good racket lag, very good racket lag on some shots, okay? And overall, just a very smooth looking swing. Now let's get into some of the issues and nitpicks, okay? In these first few frames here, you can see that what he's slightly missing is that his coil isn't especially deep, okay? So he has a relatively shallow coil of his upper body. And I noticed this not just on this particular shot, but on many of his shots, he just doesn't fully coil his hips and torso enough. Okay, so he's missing out on some potential power, probably 20%. And just by visually looking at this, I don't get that strong stored feeling across the trunk that I see in other forehands like Sinner or Djokovic, for example. So already in this first phase, the red sling is forming but not heavily loaded. So check out my video on red sling versus green sling, the two diagonals. That video is one of the most important videos you'll ever watch on tennis technique. So the sling I'm referring to goes from his right abs to his left chest, and that sling is not being stretched very much because he's not coiling fully. But on this particular shot, since it looks like he's trying to hit cross court, it's not the worst thing in the world. But here's where things get much messier, okay? It's in this transition from backswing to forward swing that the subtle issue really starts to appear, okay? So we can see right about here, we can see that his hips and pelvis starts to rotate, okay, forwards towards the net. So watch carefully right here. It starts to uncoil, but the problem is that his torso or his chest is already starting to follow with it. So there's no delay between the hips and the torso. And if you don't understand why this is a big issue, check out my video on the kinetic chain, okay? I explain all of this in great detail. But in the ideal stroke, for example, Sinner Djokovic, you'll notice that the hips go, and then the chest stays back just a little bit longer. So you don't want everything to go in sync or at the same time, because you lose that separation, which creates elastic stretch, which creates extra power and momentum. So we can see here, his hips and torso begin moving closer together in timing versus other pros. So it's very subtle. I've studied tons of forehands to be able to have the eye to see this. But basically that red sling that I discussed that was formed between the right abs and the left chest starts getting cut short before it gets stretched to its maximum peak. So let me explain a little bit more what I mean by the red sling. So when you coil, you're creating a little bit of a stretch effect because both the hips and the torso are going to coil, but the torso is going to coil slightly more than the hips. This creates an elastic stretch, which I'm referring to as the red sling. So now there's separation between the hips and the torso. Now this red sling is going to be stretched even further during the very beginning of the forward swing. So right around here, it's going to be stretched even more because the hips are going to lead. Okay, they're going to start opening up while the torso lags behind. That's what you want to have happen optimally. So this red sling, like a rubber band, will be stretched even more when the hips rotate forward, but the torso stays back. So ideally, what should happen in an elite pattern is that the hips begin rotating and the torso delays, which causes the separation between the two to increase and the red sling to reach its maximum stretch. But you can see that what this player does is the hips rotate, but the torso already starts going with it. You can see how the chest and the hips are kind of going together too much, instead of the hips going and the torso resisting and the stretch increasing. So the stretch never reaches its full potential because the torso doesn't stay back long enough. What this means is that there's going to be less stored energy. So now let's check out what happens during the lag phase of the swing. Okay, so right around here, the racket drops in a lag, which is really good. He gets pretty decent lag. I can see pretty much a 90-degree angle formed, but the body is already partially open. He's a bit too open and the chest is not resisting much anymore. This is the critical difference. In elite timing, the lag appears while the torso is still relatively closed, but here the lag appears after some torso opening has already occurred. So the lag is definitely real, but it's not fully loaded lag. It's not optimized lag. So now in the pre-contact phase after the lag, the torso is continuing to open and the upper arm is moving forward, but it's not being explosively carried forward like the elite pros. It's more just going along with the rotation. So instead of the red sling being stretch and then a sling and release effect, it's more like his upper body is rotating and his arm is just coming with it. And we can see that his body is fairly open around contact. His arm has decent extension. His contact is clean, but we don't see that late burst of upper arm acceleration right here until contact. It's not as significant or prominent as it would be in elite forehands. So we don't really see the whip from the stretch effect. So he has a great shot, but slightly reduced elasticity and explosiveness. If I were to fix this player's swing in one sentence, I would say stop letting the torso dominate so early. Let the torso hang back a little bit more and uncoil it after the hips rather than with the hips. So the timing difference is really subtle. In real time, everything looks like it goes together. I actually had someone comment saying, no, there's no separation between anything. Everything happens at the same time. Yeah, because in real time, everything happens so fast. But what you would want to think if you were this player is to just delay by like literally a fraction of a second. So just a slight micro delay in the torso as the hips start uncoiling and he would be good to go. Okay, and also just coiling a little bit more during the initial unit turn would also help him get more power. So if you're interested in having your technique analyzed by me, it can be any stroke, forehand, backhand, serve, volley, and I'll help you figure out what's going wrong with it. Compare it to the pros, break down exactly what you're doing wrong and how to fix it. Okay, I've been studying slow motion footage for over 10 years and I will break it down to a T and tell you how to fix it. The hardest part is honestly changing your stroke because you're so used to doing it the way you've always been doing because it's in your muscle memory. But for those who are dedicated and really want to improve, feel free to reach out to me. I'll help you get to that next level by understanding the proper technique.
Celebrate because we